Good evening. Happy Monday, everybody. Tonight we're continuing our series with our March Take Over the Mic. And when I knew that I was deciding to pass the mic to other teammates this month, Dana was one that I was like, I need her to speak because it's a rare occasion when you have a coach walk away from the business and then come back to the business. That doesn't happen. I mean, I guarantee if you stick around long enough, you will have coaches who quit your team and who return to your team. But Dana is the first one that's ever done that for me. And quite honestly, when she did quit, it was, we talk about hard moments in the business. That was a hard moment. And I think it was a hard moment. And her and I had a little heart to heart when she decided to come back about how it was a hard moment because I just felt helpless in the sense that I knew that there was probably more to the story, but I couldn't fill in the gap, and sometimes that happens where there's a coach on our team who, just disappears, or a client we're working with, or somebody we even invited, and then we start following up with them and we don't hear back, and our heart just aches, it grieves, because we want so badly to be able to fix or help or solve a problem for somebody else. And it's moments in the business like this that I think, especially, and you're going to learn from Dana tonight with this, but in situations like this, I think when a coach comes back and goes through a journey that broke them, it ends up building them to be stronger. And so her comeback, I'm just like, the first day I was like, girl, what do you need from me? Like, I know you're ready to fly, because I think that's just what happens when a coach kind of makes that decision. So I knew that she had to share her story, because I think it's easy to not share a story like that. And I don't think our team is a team like that wants to just let that fly under the radar. I think there's something to be had and learned in knowing someone's journey through having to walk away and then realizing that this community was actually something that they truly needed in their life, and coming back to that definitely takes a lot of courage. So Dana, I'm super excited to hear from you tonight. I am going to go ahead and mute myself, and you can unmute and take it away, girlfriend.
So I apologize in advance. My dog is currently running in circles barking, so bear with me on that front. Hi, I'm super excited to talk to you all tonight. I'm a little nervous to share my story, only because I straight up ghosted your girl Brittany, hardcore ghosted. That's okay. I made it back. I was super nervous that heart to heart we had, I was all over the place. She's going to hate me. She's never going to talk to me. None of that happened, obviously, because why would it? But yeah, so kind of letting you know right off the bat, my goal tonight is not to talk for the whole time. I do want to let you answer or ask any questions you have, and maybe I could answer them. Stuff, I just don't really want to blab the whole time, because we all get bored of that from time to time, right? I also wanted to share a little bit about kind of the psychology behind exercise and how that played into my journey, and how it's going to be playing into a lot of your clients and other coaches' journeys as well, because as you may or may not know, it's everybody's got mental health, and we all have our different experiences with it, and a lot of people suffer from things that maybe aren't so great or easy to talk about. So maybe we'll go over a few of the scientific-y stuff. I won't get too dense, hopefully, and if I do, just please unmute and let me know, because yeah, exactly, you just be like, I have no idea what you said, say that again in English. I'll do my best. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully it'll work great like it did last time. Boom, can you see it? Nod at me, yeah? Yeah, cool. Okay, let's get this started. So can somebody unmute and tell me that they can see my screen, because I can't see any of you anymore.
You are good to go, girlfriend.
Oh, sweet. Okay, so Get Psyched is what I've decided to call my PowerPoint. I love bad puns, and it kind of just fit with my whole, what was the cheesiest thing I could name it and still make it relevant. So that popped into my head. A little bit about me. I'm a dog mom. She's being very quiet right now, which is awesome, which probably won't last. I'm currently a grad student. I'm in my last 4 months of grad school. I'm going to have a Master's of Science in Psychology with a focus in research and neurology. So all that really big worded nerdy stuff. I apparently know a lot about it, but if you were to ask me to say something cool about it, I would blank. I'm a Beachbody coach and love it. I'm a second-time Beachbody coach, a returning Beachbody coach, and I'm a retired band director. So to kind of go into a little more depth on those things, that I basically wanted to give you the intro. Hey, shh, Jinx, it's okay. I wanted to give you a little bit of my backstory and how I came to Beachbody, how I got started and then stopped and then restarted. So basically, I've always been luckily pretty naturally thin. I was a dancer most of my life. I quit dance when I came into college because I was doing a bunch of like band rehearsal stuff. It's happening all the time. And I've always been pretty active, and that kept me, pretty in shape. I've always been really healthy, very, very lucky that way. And I was blessed, I suppose. At least that's what a lot of people would tell me. And I was like, oh, okay, great. I don't know what that means. But I think kind of for me, the downside to that was I never really learned how to take care of myself. And self-care was never something that I did. And I think that's like twofold. I was a dancer, and a lot of what I learned as a dancer, I did like hardcore ballet. I started at 3, went till I was like 18, 19. And everything was very, very much like your body needs to look like this. And if you were built a little differently, you didn't make the team. And, sure, you're hurt, but you just pushed through that injury and stuff like that, So there was never really a focus on like, oh, you should roll out or you should take a bath and soak. And, and I think another place, because you definitely don't learn that stuff in school, at least that wasn't my experience. And another place some people learn that from are their parents, but my parents were very much like, they were really hard workers. They were, they just constantly on the go. And I didn't really see them taking time for themselves. They always took time for my sister and I, but never for themselves. So I kind of got to college and was just going on my merry way. And needless to say, I made my way through. I wasn't super into drink. I did drink, but I wasn't like a heavy partier or anything like that. So I made it through college fine. I got out of college. I landed my dream job in the Bay Area. I was the music director at Mountain View High School for 5.5 years. But shortly after moving to the Bay Area after college and working, I realized that you didn't have any kind of balance. I was working and then I would come home just to sleep so I could go back to work. And that worked, pretty well I was, early 20s, right? It worked pretty well for me for a long time. And then it just stopped working, right? I started to get run down. I started to just not be happy. It didn't help. I wasn't in a fantastic relationship at the time. So I kind of went, I was reaching out for help and wasn't getting any. And I was like, oh, maybe I should start eating better because that's what people do. And, and the support there was, like, oh, why do that? That's stupid. Blah, blah, blah. Like, you need to be thinner. You need, stereotypical bad relationship stuff. So I started to wonder why I was so unhappy, and, finally reached a breaking point about 2 years into the job where I finally had to go to the doctor, and I was like, this is happening, on and on, totally gave the description, and they were like, okay, well, we think you need to see a psychologist, a therapist, because we're pretty sure that you have depression and generalized anxiety disorder. And I was like, oh, hold the phone. No, I don't. Number one. Number two, let's talk about the stigma that comes with being a crazy person, right? And so all of those things, the mean girl was full bore. I was like, you're failing, you're not doing your job right, you've now got this diagnosis, and like you let all this, I was super like back on myself. So I got therapy, I got medicine to help me like cope with stuff, and kind of through that process I realized that, oh, you know, there's more than just working. And one of the women I worked with at the time introduced me to Brittany in an odd way. I was band director, so I did a lot of color guard, and I had to fire my head color guard person, and this person was like, oh my gosh, you have to get Brittany to be head of your color guard, and she's so great, and she just moved here. And so I friended Brittany on Facebook, and I was like, hey, come teach my color guard. And which wasn't a great tact, and I didn't hear back, and I was like, oh well, that was kind of a cold call anyway. But I started noticing Brittany doing these groups, so I watched and watched and watched, and then my friend was like, oh, I do these groups with her, she's great. So I was like, oh, well, I'm kind of on this new me kick. Like, maybe that's what I need, you know. But by this time I'm already feeling considerably better because I am like, you know, I got help. Right. So I started the Beachbody through, I forget which group. I think I started with Size, and it was great. I didn't love the workout routine so much, but I loved the group. And I was, you know, I'd moved here, didn't have a ton of friends. All of my friends were through that relationship, which wasn't going well. So I was just excited to have a way to kind of connect with people. And that's exactly what it did. And I fell head over heels in love. And I was like, this is awesome. I signed up to be a discount coach. And then I was like, you know what? I teach people for a living. I could lead a group. You know, I created my first group, and kind of things were going and all that stuff. And then, you know, I got out of a bad relationship. I got my own apartment. I was like top of the world. Everything was great. And then bam, a really, really close friend, my sister's boyfriend of like forever years, committed suicide. And instead of doing what I had learned and what I had been preaching to, you know, people on social media, I turned away from any kind of support group that I had. I, you know, receded into myself. I like just straight up withdrew. I think the day that I actually canceled my coach, you know, or my subscription to Beachbody, basically, not the bod, but the shakes and my coaching. I didn't even tell Brittany. I was just so ashamed of myself, and like I knew I was doing the wrong thing by receding, because I knew if I reached out that people would be there for me, and I just didn't know how to reach out. And I didn't know, you know, at the time I was telling myself I didn't want people to comfort me, but you know, I like looking back at it now, I'm like, that's what I really needed. Right. So I just gone into the night, like disappeared, you know, nobody knew where I'd gone. And, you know, and I took a lot of time to be with my sister and kind of help her cope through that. You know, and she's still in a rough place, but things have gotten a lot better. You know, so we were dealing with that, and I finally came to a situation where stuff in my job got really, really just not great. A lot of different things, a lot of politics, a lot of, you know, really negative environment that just wasn't serving me anymore. And so I decided to leave, to take another job, oddly. That job ended up not working out because the boss that I was working under was not very nice. Like, she would talk down to people. There were multiple times she had told me that I was worthless, that I lacked motivation, and that I was wasting her time, and, you know, all of these really negative things. And I came to kind of like a breaking point where I was like, I don't have to do that. Like, I don't have to live a life where somebody else makes me feel bad. So I quit that job also. So I had quit what I thought was like my forever job. And then I quit this other job that was supposed to replace my forever job. And I was lovely, unemployed, living in Silicon Valley. I have a great support system, Josh, and he's amazing. And I, you know, couldn't have gotten through any of this without him either. But yeah, I was really depressed, and I was kind of back to square one. You know, was struggling to cope. I was struggling. I was hurting. I needed people. I needed someone there for me. And then I was kind of skirting in and out of doing Beachbody again. I was like, okay, I really want to do this 80-day thing because I had put on a lot of weight, a lot more weight than I had wanted to after the suicide and coping and stuff. So I was like, oh, I'll do this 80-day thing, but I don't think I'll be a coach. And then one morning I just woke up and I was like, why not? Like, why did you ever quit? Why did you leave? You loved it. You enjoyed it, and so I texted Brittany that day and I was like, I've been putting off texting you. Maybe you could come meet me for coffee or something. And then she was like, sure. Okay. Typical amazing Brittany response. And I was like super nervous driving over there. And then I basically sat down and was like, I straight up ghosted you. It was my bad. I owned it. But that, I say it now, it was really easy, but at the time it took a lot to get back to that point. Like, I don't know how to put into words how difficult that journey from losing 2 jobs and a really close friend to like getting back to where I was comfortable enough with myself to like reach back out to Brittany, even though I had wanted to the whole time, if that makes sense. I don't even know if it makes sense to me yet, so bear with me. So before I reached out to her, I did a lot of soul searching, and I asked myself, like, are we gonna actually do it this time? Because I wasn't about to re-sign up for something and kind of ghost it again, right? So I made the decision that no matter how little success I saw or how great success I saw, I was going to do everything I could possibly think to do to forward my business. I'd watch all the videos. I would spend the day sending friend requests. I would schedule the time in because I actually had the luxury of time for once. And that's kind of what I've been doing. I've been, every day I've got this notebook. It's like full of pages. And I'll just skip to a page here so you can see it. But I've got basically, I'm tracking what I'm doing, and I don't have like a really cool, cute tracking page that I made because I was just sitting at home like, oh, this is a notebook right here. But I've got like new people I followed on Instagram, new people I followed on Facebook, new conversations I started. I record all of it. I write it down. I'm just that kind of person. I like to write things down. It sticks better. And I've done that every single day since I became a coach. I have not skipped a day. I skip Sundays because I just take Sunday. But that's not skipping. I've decided. So I've decided that I would throw myself 1,000,000% back into it. And that I think was just to build the courage to come back and say that, I want to be accepted into the group again. I needed to do that for myself in order to feel good about like requesting to be in, because I felt like at the time, like it's a tribe, right? We talk about it's a tribe, and I needed to make sure that I wasn't going to, back out of the tribe again. Because I wasn't really okay with doing that the first time, like as a person, like that didn't sit well with me. So that's kind of like the rambly long version of how I came back and left, came, left, and then came back. But kind of an ongoing running theme here has been my master's degree. So I started getting a master's in psychology because I could do it while still working. Don't recommend it. Anything that has like a master's, anything with a science degree, they don't really understand what part-time means. So they like, oh yeah, you part-time take like 3 units, which sounds great because like, in undergrad, you take a lot more than that. Well, 3 units of like graduate school, totally different ballgame, like ridiculous. So heads up, if you're considering that, just a warning, they don't really understand what part-time means. I guess it means that the classes meet after like the typical work day. But if you're a band person, you know that doesn't exist. Anyway, yeah, so I've been doing this master's degree because I could do it while still working. I'm interested in the topic. but really it's helped me grow my business. And it's helped me understand how I can be a better coach, in a lot of ways that I didn't realize it would. So I kind of wanted to talk a little bit, and then I'll open it up for questions that you can ask kind of about, well, you can ask whatever you want really. But if you had more questions about like leaving or coming back to, or anything like that, we can go over that as well. So I wanted to talk a little bit about mental health, how it's important, why it's important, and how it kind of affects, or, you know, how I've noticed it affects clients. So my background is a little bit like, I have experience with clinical therapy. So I've done like actual intake with real patients and sat, you know, in that chair and done the stereotypical, like, how does that make you feel? I didn't say that. That's not kosher. But I've got some experience in the therapy world as well as the clinical research world. And these are kind of the things that I've noticed now that are transferring really, really well to Beachbody and have been really great kind of conversation starters. And I'll explain that in a sec. But a new way to connect to clients that I think really, really speaks to our self-care base, and how we talk about like being, you know, living our best life. And I think that this really, really applies there. So why mental health and what makes it so important? Everyone has mental health, right? It's not something you learn a lot about in school. Personally, I remember like we had a health class, and we talked like briefly about like why you should eat healthy, and like, you know, you're a lady, so you get a special time a month, but they never really went into anything that spoke about taking care of yourself mentally. So a lot of people don't have that kind of training or outlook, and might not know why they're unhappy, or might not understand why, you know, maybe working out or eating better is actually going to affect them in ways other than like, oh, I look really good in the mirror. Because I know that's what I used to think about working out. I was very much like, oh, if I lift weights, then my arms will get big and then I'll look good in a dress or whatever. And finally, odds are that, you know, who are you talking to could be suffering, could have suffered from, or could know someone who is currently suffering from a mental illness. And I can say like now I'm really comfortable sharing my story. I wasn't always. I think the amount of people in my life who knew and or know that I have suffered from and do suffer from, you know, mental health issues is a very small group, and I'm growing it, right? But it's still it's still a very guarded part just because of the stigma and kind of how I was raised to think about it. So let's talk about depression. Depression is very, very prevalent. It is the number one thing number one mental illness that's seen, and that people seek treatment for. There are some stats on here that are, I couldn't resist putting in some stats. I like had them and I was like, yes, I can use them in my presentation. So we've got 12 to 20% of adults will be diagnosed at some point in their life with depression. It does affect females more, and we're not really sure. The research community isn't really sure if it's because females are biologically more predisposed for it, or if females just admit to it more than males. Like there is a theory that maybe males suffer just as much, but they've been raised to not talk about emotions maybe, or, you know, masculinity norms kind of get in the way of them sharing. So it's actually not super sure what is causing that, but there is it does lean more female. And this says it peaks between ages 35 to 45. They do show actually depression starting as early as age 4 now. That's like a new discovery, that it's starting early and earlier. So it peaks between ages 35 and 45. I kind of read that, you know, we're still learning. So let's talk a little bit about, sorry, I'm checking time. Okay, perfect. So let's talk a little bit about how exercise comes into play here. And I'm going to talk about exercise over healthy eating because, well, number one, for time, and number two, because exercise really is the core changing factor in mental health, and how it, contributes to your outlook on things. So what we're talking about here applies to all kinds of mental health. So anything from depression to anxiety, those are the most highly studied, but also, really serious things like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, like pretty much anything you could possibly suffer from mental health wise, exercise does show an extreme improvement. It's not often something that is recommended to people. Like oftentimes you go in and they're like, here, take some medicine and we'll do some therapy and we'll work through it. But what we're really learning now, again, the research community is learning that the earlier you can suggest exercise as a form of intervention for mental health, the better. We don't know a lot about a lot of the medications that are prescribed, like long-term about them, because they're still relatively new, but we do know the long-term effects of exercise are positive. And we do know that they have extreme changes, or they cause pretty significant changes in the chemical makeup in the brain. And here, these are just some facts that I figured I'd throw down for those of us. I'm one of these people, I like to read the slides, but I'll skim through them really quick. That, we know a lot about anxiety and depression. So we know that exercises have been proven to reduce anxiety and depression. It does this twofold. So it can improve anxiety, depression, just based on the fact that you're improving your self-esteem. And like that can be from like my clothes are fitting better to, I can now do a push-up to, pretty much your self-esteem comes from lots of different things, in other words. And then cognitive function, it actually makes your brain, click faster. Yeah, and then basically saying the same thing, found to alleviate symptoms such as low self-esteem and social withdrawal. And then this last bullet is a little bit more dense, and looking at it now, I don't know if I would have put that in there because it doesn't really flow great, but whatever, it happened, we're doing it. So basically the thought behind why exercise works, and I do remember why I put it in there, because I had a client ask me, I had a girl who came to me. She's suffering actually from bipolar disorder, oddly enough. And she's like, well, why does exercise work? And I was like, oh, well, it does this, this, and this. She's like, yeah, but like, actually why? Like, do you even know? And I was like, well, and so basically, if you ever get that question, now you'll know, is because it increases the blood circulation to your brain. And that affects your HPA axis. And the quickest way to kind of talk about that is that part of your brain controls your mood, it controls your emotion, and it controls your fight or flight reaction. And that's important because fight or flight is basically anxiety, right? When you're scared, you get anxious. When you are like, making that decision to stand up for yourself, you're anxious. When you make that decision to run away, you're still anxious. So that's a lot of anxiety. And by increasing the circulation to that area, it stabilizes mood. It gives your brain more time to process that fight or flight reaction so that you don't have to make such sudden decisions. And it affects how you react to stress overall. That was my last slide. So I'm going to pull you guys back up so I can see your faces again. Okay, sorry, it got dense there for a hot second. We're back, we're good. I'm here. I hope you're still with me and you're not like, okay. So yeah, basically, I think that if somebody had explained to me that exercise was more than just looking good in the mirror, at an earlier age, I would have I think come to a different conclusion. Like that kind of fits back into not knowing a lot about self-care. So I've been doing a push with my clients lately to do more in the form of educating on the why exercise is good, other than your body will look good and you'll feel good. Like I get a lot of questions about like, yeah, I'll feel good how? Or, people want more of an explanation, in other words. So yeah, that was a lot of talking. There's only 7 minutes left. And I do want to I see I've got quite a few comments, and I want to have some time to let you ask questions. Maybe you wanted me to expand on something that I just brushed over, or anything like that. Or you can see my cute dog.
I'm ready to talk, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I love the stats, first of all. I think more and more and more we're getting people who are asking lots and lots of questions, and more it's important for them to know the why behind why you do what you do and why you think they should do it too. And it's getting easier for me to connect with people who have similar issues to me, like anxiety or social stress or what have you. I mean, I think it's way more common than people want to admit. And something I'm trying to do lately is some meditation, which meditation and things like yoga and regular exercise, especially that sort of trifecta, along with a much healthier diet, they can really do wonders. The meditation's hard for me. I'm like an unfocused, sort of almost scatterbrained kind of person. So the focus is really hard for me, but that's kind of why you have to do it, is to work on it and make it better. So that might take me a while, but meditation and those things have really been shown to decrease your likelihood of having, like if you're prone to panic attacks, which I know several people who have anxiety or panic attacks like on the regular. So they would really benefit from something like that.
Definitely.
And that's just part of my experience.
No, I've been trying to be better at meditation. It's also really difficult for me. I'm kind of high strung. So sitting and being with myself is something I've been working on a lot. Well, thank you. I'm glad you like the statistics.
Yeah, the neurology field is like really fascinating.
Yeah.
I follow, there's a podcast that I really enjoy listening to. He's a PhD of neurology, and he doesn't necessarily focus on the neurology very much, but just the range of topics that he covers and all the just vast variety of guests that I get to hear from, and just topics I wouldn't expect that I'd be interested in. I just love it. It's a little bit, not exactly all over the place, but it's always something different.
Yeah. And if you're interested in stuff like that, Oliver Sacks, who just recently passed away, but he's really good at making that kind of thing accessible. I find it really difficult to listen to a lot of neurology stuff, because I find it interesting, but I really just want to know how it applies to me and affects my life. And he's really good at making it like, talking about why something happens for you instead of being like, oh, long giant word, So I found him pretty useful for that type of stuff. Yeah, awesome.
Personally, I want to say thank you for opening up, because opening up is really hard. And I think when we open up with each other, whether it's on Wednesday nights or one-on-one or Monday nights, we truly realize we all have a lot in common. I know the same but we have a family member, or maybe we're going through something, and major snaps for all of that. Thank you. Thanks for trusting us.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I do. I definitely trust you guys. But it's part of, I'm also trying to just be more open, and if people don't accept it, like that's good too, right? I mean, every time somebody throws a stone, and they do, I just kind of see it as like, you know, they've been exposed now, and I get stronger from it. But don't get me wrong, I much prefer talking to people like you all.
Amen.
Much safer.
Yeah, I agree. It's really, I think it's really, really important to hear openly more about discussion about not just mental illness, but like your everyday, I don't want to say average or run of the mill, but it's kind of putting it to a different like level of importance. Like it's all important. Like talking about it more is, you know, way more beneficial.
Yeah, no, it's crucial.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm going to step in because there's less than a minute and I don't want it to hang up on us like it's done in the past, because last time that happened, Dana's face wasn't cute in the picture. And I'm sorry, Dana, but I had to snap it while you're talking.
Oh, good.
No, not today. The other day. The other one where it was like, and I really felt bad posting that, but I had, you know, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? My hands were tied. Couple of things though that like really hit me tonight that I think are super relevant. I love how she did a snapshot of herself, and I think that's an activity that we could all benefit from doing, is taking a second and thinking like, what makes me me? And it might not be super unique to you, but what are the things that make up you and make you the unique person that you are and the unique contributor that you are to our team? Because everyone on our team is better when you share your strengths. I loved how she talked about, you know, where do we learn this from? Who do we learn this from? If we were never taught as a child, or we were always thin or whatever, you know, where do we learn it from? And that's where we step in. That's where we have this gift to be able to do that. You know, I loved her progression of moving to the Bay Area, no friends. She loved the community. That's so common nowadays for people, for young people who are graduating out of college and, you know, just trying to get their feet on the ground. Their people are surrounded by so much negativity and they don't even realize it. They don't even know that a community like us can exist. And I especially love that she hasn't skipped a day since she came back. That is incredible. So kudos to you, my friend. Thank you for sharing your heart tonight. I so appreciate that. The thread, you guys, like, was just incredible. So
I like loving it.